Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. This is our next episode in our CEO series featuring DOSS, and I've got Wiley with us, the CEO of the company. So Wiley, I'm curious, you are in this category, broadly speaking, called AI ERP, right? But you're not calling it an ERP. You're calling it an operations cloud. So I'm curious to understand a little more about your vision about this new category
Yeah.
and the end user that you're trying to serve.
If we look at the acronym ERP, it's kind of a non-acronym. It doesn't really mean anything. Enterprise Resource Planning. I don't really know what that means. And if we look at the history of each one of these, especially from like a generational standpoint, we had these mainframes. IBM built these back in the late 1960s, early 1970s. And then you put applications for finance and accounting on them. 70s and 80s, we get PCs into the 70s. We start inserting disks and actually, installing software on client server. That was the second generation. And then towards the end of the 90s, we found out that we could put these applications on the internet. And then eventually, we moved from PeopleSoft to Workday, Siebel Systems to Salesforce, and we came up with the idea of the cloud. ERPs are amazing at tracking the flow of dollars. They are not amazing at tracking the flow of goods. Our ability to work with operations leaders and help them model the complexity of their business, which is growing a lot in the last couple of decades, and we were talking about this earlier. It's something that we've been able to give them a platform that they can grow with that is independent of the rigidity and accountability that you want out of a standard finance and accounting system. So Operations Cloud takes procurement, inventory management, order management, freight, understanding the master data management, things that traditional ERP has not been amazing at, moving that out and connecting it into third-party finance and accounting systems in a way that is really thoughtful and intentional.
Is the operations getting more complex? Fast forward 20 years ago, look at it today. The operations leader was mostly the second-class citizen, but they were making do with, duct tape kind of measures with Excel spreadsheets and the like. So why does that not work anymore? And why does an operations team say, hey, I need the solutions now?
It's never been easier to build a business, but at the same time, that means the competitive pressure is much higher. We meet super young companies that are doing even just, a single-digit $1 million in revenue who have operations that are as complex as a company that's making $100 million in revenue because they have to go out and compete in every single surface for customer attention, for customer love. Amazon has, set a lot of expectations about same-day shipping and things like this. Like, it has never been harder to compete in today's landscape. Therefore, the complexity of the business has to match that. And so they need tools to be able to manage that complexity.
Then I'll be curious maybe to dive then into DOS, right? So how do you guys solve it? I know there's this notion of a flexible data model that you've built out, but give us some color on what is built here, why is it so complex, why is it so hard to do?
It's really hard to be able to do flexible things at runtime inside of a database and then also make it behave like a database and be transactional. So what we actually ended up building was functionally a hybrid transactional and analytical processing database, HTAP. The moment our applications touch this system, it feels like they're touching the raw performance of a database, but with the composability of something that feels a lot more like Excel.
Are you trying to rip out the ERP? Are you doing something different? How do you ensure the operations leader can use the software when it still works well with the GL? What does that vision look like for you?
Yeah, we're definitely not trying to rip out the ERP. Businesses have grown in their complexity, and as they stretched their ERP into places that it really doesn't make sense, and that's left space for a solution. And that's really what category creation is like the market expands and and holes emerge where you're like, hey, I didn't realize there was a hole there before. We should probably fill that with something. What do we put there? And that's our whole point with Operations Cloud. And it's something that has probably been needed for a while, but wasn't technically feasible before.
So help us understand, I'm sure there's a lot of customers watching this. Walk us through what do you guys do, say in the first week of entering a customer?
I think the thing that is most interesting to me around talking to our customers is they mostly are interested in capabilities. They'll come to us and say, we really want demand planning. And, we can be a bit fun with them and be like, okay, what do you actually mean by that? And then they explain it. You're like, okay, so you want to understand how you can go out and automatically produce enough inventory to fulfill the orders that you think you will have at some point in the future. But that forecast for demand isn't known. The ability to understand current levels of inventory isn't known. Your ability to reconcile the SKUs that you purchase, the SKUs that you store, and the SKUs that you sell also isn't known. So you want demand planning, but we're missing like 5 things in between that. And I think if you remember, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like sometimes customers are like coming to us and asking for enlightenment. I'm like, when was the last time you ate? You don't have food, water, shelter. Okay, cool. Let's start there, right? Our sales leader would kick me for not saying this. The only things our customers care about. How do I improve the profitability of my business? How do I grow my revenue? How do I meet my customers where they are and make them happier? And how do I mitigate future risks? We don't have to read the tea leaves to understand these businesses. Now, what we do need to understand is we go in and go, okay, how do you do that as a company? What is unique that you do? Oh, you're a coffee business. You care a lot about procuring green coffee from your place of origin in Ethiopia or in Venezuela or Colombia. Oh, and you actually buy it directly from the growers and you want to track the lots from the growers. Okay, that's unique. We have to figure out how to massage that in and adapt that into our current procurement process that we run as a default.
I'm curious, there's one question that has been plaguing software investors over the last couple of months, right? Which is AI will eat software. And the concerns, if I may, as an investor, are broadly threefold when it comes to AI with application software. The first concern is that with vibe coding, I can vibe code many applications already. I don't have to get it perfect. I just have to get it 80% good enough. And if it's 80% good enough, maybe that applies some amount of pricing pressure on the incumbents.
Right.
The second issue is, what if these AI labs move up the application stack?
Right.
And if I'm a user and I'm using the AI application to use the SaaS application on the back end, then guess what? I need fewer seats on the back end, which directly impacts our revenue model.
Right.
And the third is that, hey, if I have now become the system of engagement, I being the Frontier lab,
Yep.
then does the application at the back end just become a dumb kind of data pipe? How does DOSS mitigate against some of this? Are you guys working with this tailwind? Are you working as a headwind? How do you think about the business over the next 3 to 5 years?
In the analogy of headwinds and tailwinds, I think there's an omission of the fact that you can turn the plane and you can choose where you go. And I think that's actually the story that's happening right now in the market is like, do you want AI to be a headwind or a tailwind for you as a company? It comes down to these periods again of these generations of technology. Gen 1 mainframe, Gen 2 client server, Gen 3 cloud. Our view is that we are in a 4th generation of transformative change. And so we're going to orient the company to benefit from AI eating software. For us as a company, that means that you make a couple of different decisions around product and engineering, but then also around how you build your revenue model and how you scale the business. So we're not going to sell to users. We know that the users of the future are machines. We need to sell infrastructure that they can consume.
Let's fast forward in a time where the human is now becoming the reviewer, not the doer.
Right.
What could this new paradigm look like, and how do you build a product for it?
I think managing AI and agents in general, it's going to be a lot like managing people and managing organizations. And ask any manager, they're going to be like, my best employees are the people who bring me problems and they tell me solutions and they manage up to me. Systems are going to drive themselves. I think that is the hallmark quality of what is going to be the Gen 4 architecture is that you will have self-driving software. And the same way that Uber was an amazing innovation, you can click a button and a human being comes and brings you a car. Waymo is a fundamentally different thing. You click a button and the car brings itself to you. And I think that the further extension of it is that the software will deliver to you packaged up answers to problems you didn't even know you had and solutions that it partially delivers or fully delivers depending on what it assesses the risk profile of those things to be.
You also have a term that you use extensively, which I like a lot. You call it the ERP racket.
Yeah.
And you basically say that a lot of the vendors that exist in the market today are actually incentivized to make their product as complex as possible to use.
Yes.
And so that's a pretty big claim that you've made. Can you kind of expand on it, and how is DOSS different from that regard?
I see it a little bit in jest, but in every joke, there is some shred of truth, right? If I were to think about our own infrastructure and our own companies, it'd be like taking the most important, system design of how your business functions and saying, I'm going to give that to somebody else. I'm going to lock it in a box that I don't understand. And I'm going to ask this person to basically, charge me money every single time I want to open it and understand it. which is kind of a fundamentally insane claim, on its face. But the benefit of that is that they take on the complexity. They do the hard work. And so it has its pros and cons. And our view of this is that the role and relationship of the systems integrators to their customers and their software vendors is going to change dramatically. They're going to get pushed up the stack in actually, I think, a materially good way for their businesses. I actually see this as a benefit for everyone in the industry, which is that a lot of the work that is mundane, difficult, taxing, very hard for the organization to operate, that's all going to be done by agents. It's all going to be done by machines. It's going to be manufactured. And the work that needs to remain is, how do we manage our relationships with our customers? How do we deeply understand their business? How do we work with people to understand the things they want, the things they need, and things that they want to go do in the future, and like the business objectives?
You're going up against some pretty big weights.
Yeah.
Right? You're going against SAP, NetSuite, QuickBooks. I mean, these are large companies, billions of dollars of revenue, very entrenched. How does a small company, just a few years old, take them on? And, why should an engineer who has so many options, right? Whether they want to join some of these companies or say the AI labs or something else, why would they join you versus something else?
The thing that we're typically competing against is actually inaction and the business's inability to execute. Very rarely are we directly competing for, I'm evaluating vendor A and I'm evaluating DOSS. The reason that I think this is exciting from a technology standpoint and why people, in the battle of the David and Goliath here is like, this has happened before. Every time there is enabling technology, that always happens at a low level, foundational level, there's this lag where the enabling technology gets brought to market, and then people are trying to figure out, what do we do with this thing? What do we do with the operating system? What do we do with the internet? And it takes 10, 15, 20 years to actually commercialize it in its full, true manifestation, which ultimately a lot of times is at the application layer. My view on it is that it's a bit of an arms race right now. How fast can we build the agentic applications company and the agentic system of record versus how fast can the incumbents rewrite their system to be agentic? That's really the next question, is how fast can they get to that, or how fast can we get to it? I like to bet on small startups being nimble.
So do we.
Yeah.
When you were in the market, how did you decide who the right partners were?
You have to find a group of people who believes in the world that you're building toward and will irrationally work through those problems with you. You were to go to a public markets investor, someone who spends all of their time looking at like the precise ways that the strategy of the company could play out. By every shape and form factor, it will, from a probability standpoint, it's going to fail. But when we spend time with, teams like you guys, it's very clear that you're working to make the low probability thing happen. And partners who believe in you, they'll go do that. People who are there because, you might be the cool company that's in market right now and this cool thing's happening. Those are the people who go away when things aren't good. And that's the last thing that you want. You want people who are there, when you send bad updates and you're like, hey, things aren't going well, I need help. The people who are the first people to jump in, that's who you want. And that's what you have to look for.
Well, Wiley, on behalf of everyone at PrameG Invest, I can tell you that we're stoked to be in business with you.
Likewise.
And we can't wait to see what DOSS builds in the future.
Awesome.
Thanks for doing this.
Of course.